Yeah, that's fine. Hey there everyone, this is Dr. Modelot and welcome to the office. Let's talk about something kinda different today. I want to talk about an indie game on Steam called Rune Knights. Why this game specifically? Well, I find that this game has three things that you don't often see together. It's a fun game, programmed by a single developer, and I'm at least 90% sure that it's made entirely using pre-made assets. Pre-made and reused assets have sort of a stigma in gaming. A lot of people associate games made using pre-made assets as asset flips or cash grabs. Sometimes these games are made just for the laughs, but sometimes these games ask for real money and it creates a massive controversy. Even AAA developers are put under a microscope when an audience finds out that assets are simply being reused from other games. So why would I talk about a topic like this on my channel that's all about mods, hacks, emulators, and hardware? Well, pretty simply because I like to talk about game development as a whole. I've been interested in game programming for well over 12 years and I've created a few small projects in that time frame. I've used software like Game Maker Studio, RPG Maker, and I've had some additional experience using Python. After discovering and playing Rune Knights, I knew I wanted to talk about it since, in a way, it had kind of flipped my expectations. You see, I was writing the script for this conversation about the game and pre-made assets in games, and I kind of began to realize something. I was initially under the impression that pre-made assets in games meant a lazy developer, but after playing this game, watching the developer and the game updates, writing in the script, I really began to think about it, and pre-made assets are actually kind of awesome. By the end of the video, I'm gonna explain why that is. Now, is Rune Knights a completely solid, perfect experience that can mirror a AAA title? Well, no, it's not. But it is stupid fun. It doesn't cost much, and the developer cares about the project. So, what is Rune Knights? Rune Knights is a third-person action RPG that takes place in a generic fantasy setting. The developer touts the fact that the game has no story, using a very bare-bones "the darkness is growing stronger" idea to progress a character and unlock new dungeons to explore. The game has a very Diablo-esque loot mechanic with randomly generated stats and abilities, and a free-form combat system. Okay, that all sounds pretty cool, so let's get into the game, and everything feels almost out of place immediately. The UI, the background, the character models, and even the equipment pieces all look like they came from separate games entirely. Some of it is way more obvious than others. You get to create a character who you can customize the looks of on a pretty basic level and decide what kind of starting equipment you want to use. The equipment follows basic classes such as archers, mages, warriors, spell swords, etc. And this decision only dictates your starting equipment, so you can actually change it out as soon as you find something else. We load up the first level of the game and, well, it looks like a level that was made for a game. Take that as you will. This game also has music. I can confirm it. I listened to all 5 or 10 tracks. It's music that was made for a game. Character movement is a little awkward at first. You have a sprint and you have a dodge roll, but they're context sensitive. You can sprint outside of combat, but as soon as combat engages, it changes to a dodge, so that kinda took a bit of getting used to. You play through this really short level using your basic character, you beat the bosses at the end, and you get taken back to town where you can buy your equipment, abilities, and you can accept new quests. Let's talk really quick about the UI. It's a mix of pre-made assets and engine-generated assets. For those of you that might not know the difference between those two, a pre-made sprite could be something like a health bar that's been drawn in an image editor like Photoshop and having the game draw that on screen using programming. An engine-generated asset would be something like telling the game itself to draw basic geometry on screen to represent something like a health bar. In the case of Rune Knights, I'm pretty sure that the health, stamina, and mana bars are all drawn using the engine itself. These squares down here also look like they're probably drawn in engines with these images overlaying them. Looking around through the game as we keep playing it, try to think of things you believe are drawn assets versus engine created, and tell me down in the comments what you think. I wanted to look through these options really quick because there are some things in here that are kind of cool. So the game does support controllers, but you actually can change the button props based on whether you're using an Xbox controller or a PlayStation controller. You can also have a custom crosshair. You can pick a design, you can resize it, you can change the color, you can even go without a crosshair at all if you prefer to play that way. I know this isn't the only game that does this, but I do think games need more options like this, so I do appreciate that they're included. Okay, so let me tell you my biggest issue with Rune Knights. It's the level design. It's bad. I can't even defend it. The first map you play on is arguably the best looking out of all the maps. Almost every other level is a randomly generated hodgepodge of assets strewn about just everywhere. There's no linearity to almost any map in this game, and it can cause a lot of downtime because you end up having to run around the map looking for the next fight. It can be a bit tedious. Funny enough, my favorite level in this entire game is the arena. It's literally just an empty circle, and the reason I like it is because it's consistently an empty circle. I can actually create a strategy, whereas other maps, I'm just running around trying to find my enemies, and that's not really fun. So if the dev were to stick with randomly generated dungeons, I'd prefer them to be randomly generated in a more linear sort of way, like having pre-made cells that are chosen from when going to the next room. I think that would work out a little bit better. And also add some verticality to these levels. Make ramps and ledges or items that I can jump on and use to get a height advantage. That'd also make it a little more fun. But even then, there's weird design choices like the main town. You spawn in immediately and have to jump over this small trench, which is kind of odd. You can walk in a few of these buildings, but most of them are empty. I say most of them because what I didn't know for the first 6 hours of my game is that there's a guy in this building right here. I never bothered looking because none of the other buildings had vendors or people in them, so why would I look in this one single building? This design choice is an easier fix than the main levels of the game, but still it's a weird choice nonetheless. So I've been talking pretty negatively this entire time. The game is presumably made entirely of pre-made assets, tons of reused enemies, copy-paste bosses, simple maps, not so great design on the levels, generic settings, stock music. What do I like about this game? Well, it's satisfying. I mentioned a freeform combat system at the start of the video. What does that mean? Well, that means you can do almost anything at any point. Unlike something like Dark Souls where you have to commit to every attack you perform and get locked into an animation, in Rune Knights, you can jump in the air and cast a ground spell at the same time. You can dodge roll and use a potion at the same time. I don't know if I managed to catch a recording of it, but one of my most extreme examples I found was using a knife throwing ability that I had. I was able to dodge roll, perform my knife throw, and perform a jump within frames of each other. When I did that, my character basically jumped into the air while keeping all of the momentum from the dodge roll, and it sent me flying straight off the map and into the ocean. I'm not gonna lie, it was actually pretty awesome. So this game does have spells and it has abilities, but it doesn't have a standard skill tree like you see in most RPG games. All of your abilities are tied to loot. Most pieces of gear you wear have an ability attached to it, and that's added to your skill hotbar at the bottom of the screen. There's some good things and some bad things about this system. So the good thing is that you can easily experiment with new skills, unlike a standard RPG where you put a point to a skill tree and that's that. The downside is that changing out an armor piece or your weapon also means you're changing the skills in your hotbar. That can be a bit problematic when you find a really cool new piece of equipment that has a different skill, meaning you lose the skill that's possibly integral to your character build. The item system works around that, but oh man, the items. Where do I even start? So, every item you find in the game is used to modify your equipment in almost any way possible. Each equipment piece will have 1 to 5 mods, which are basically your stat boosts. Your primary item you can find is your rune stone, and that will randomly change all of the mods on a piece of gear to ones that are leveled to the rune stone. If you're level 5, you find level 5 rune stones. If you use a level 5 rune stone on a level 3 piece of equipment, it randomly changes all of the mods on it to level 5 quality. It's a complete dice roll what you get. Sometimes you get a golden legendary mod that's more powerful than usual. Sometimes you end up with multiples of the same mod, like adding 3 separate boosts to your crit chance, or adding 2 stacks of health to your current health bar. You also have an implicit mod that can't be changed using runestones, but that has a separate item that can randomize that. Let's say you only have 2 mods on your equipment, well there's an item that randomizes that. Let's say you want 6 mods on your equipment, well there's an item that can add a random implicit mod to the one you already have. Or maybe you just want to randomly change one mod on your item, you can also do that. Maybe you have a new weapon that doesn't have the skill on it you want, well you can break down your old equipment with an item and apply the skill it had to your new weapon. Or you can just outright purchase that skill from a vendor. Or you can use an item that randomly changes the skill on your equipment. Maybe you need to change your character entirely, well you can use an item that resets all of your level up points, or you can remove 1 point at a time from whatever level you want. Yeah, there's a lot of options. I admit some of the items do kind of undermine the whole randomly generated loot system by maybe giving you a little too much control, but I'm glad that the options are there to begin with for those who want to utilize it. Okay, so let's move on from skills and talk about the level up system. I did say previously that the game doesn't have skill trees, not standard ones anyway. When you level up, you receive a talent point, and you can put that point towards 8 different character archetypes. You have warriors, monks, archers, knights, support, summoner, mages, and spell swords. Each class will have a set of passives you can choose from, which will boost core stats such as your health, your magic, your stamina, regenerative abilities, defense, damage with weapon types, all that good stuff. You can put points wherever you want under any class list. Putting 5 points to one class type will give you a tier 1 ability for that class. Tier 1 abilities are pretty powerful and can change how your character functions. However, putting down 10 points into a class will unlock its second tier ability, and these can get pretty nuts. Each class has an ultimate that functions kind of like one does in Destiny, where you have to charge it in combat before you can use it, but there are other tier 2 abilities that can completely change how your character is played altogether. Every 5 points you put to a class after unlocking tier 2 will let you unlock another ability from either tier 1 or tier 2 of that class. To get some of the best powers in the game, you are encouraged to align to a class, but you don't have to. The max level in this game is 30. You could literally put 5 points into every single class and unlock a single tier 1 ability from every class. No idea what kind of build that would end up being, but you can do it. In fact, a lot of the passives and tier abilities work universally across all archetypes, meaning abilities that you find in one tree can actually positively affect your abilities in another tree. And I love it. I love the amount of freedom this game offers you, which, tangent, makes me have to ask something. I've seen this complaint in a few other games. Mainly, I see it in Skyrim. People say that the Elder Scrolls was dumbed down more in Skyrim in many ways, and one of those is being the lack of a proper class system. Any character can learn anything in the game, unlike, say, Morrowind, where you have to dedicate a character to a certain study and stick with it to become effective. One of my friends also says that Morrowind is a better game for it because you have to create a build and think of how you'll progress through the game with those specific skills. And to that I say, huh? I mean, don't get me wrong, that style of play definitely has its place in gaming, but why is freedom of choice a bad thing? I mean, sure, becoming jack of all trades, master of all is pretty unrealistic, but by not having specific character classes you have to fall into, you can mix and match skills from different character types to find entirely new strategies and combinations, creating whole new gameplay styles. Tell me your opinion on it down in the comment section. Maybe I'm crazy and people actually love Skyrim for being open-ended in that way. So back to Rune Knights. I wanted to give examples of some of the characters I've made so far, so here it goes. I have this guy. He's a blend between a warrior and a monk. He does this. All of his stats and abilities are made to complement this, so he just shreds enemies pretty fast and pretty effectively. I also made this archer character. Later on, she got an explosive arrow ability, so that's pretty fun. Whoa. I also have this guy. He's a spell sword. He uses this item in his hand called a focus, which is what you need to use to cast most of the projectile spells if your character does not use a staff. I have this character also. She's a pugilist, meaning that she fights with her bare hands. However, after I unlock a tier 2 talent that I don't have yet, she's also going to have the ability to cast magic without the need of a staff or a focus. Of course, what would this game be without dual wielding? You can dual wield any non-two-handed piece of gear, so naturally I made this guy. Yeah, this is a thing. One shield is used to attack, and the other shield is used for defense. He can parry with one hand and perform shield bashes with the other that always cause hit stun on enemies. With more cooldown bonuses to this character, he can effectively do this shield bash non-stop for as long as he still has the stamina to do it. Character builds in this game can become absolutely silly and overpowered, and it's encouraged me to keep making new characters. And then, there's online multiplayer. Yeah, I managed to convince one of my friends to try this game with me in that I bought him a copy of it and told him he was going to play it with me whether he wanted to or not. I made my archer character for the multiplayer session, which was honestly kind of a pain to get started. He joined me the first time and he got booted due to some connection issue, and it took us half an hour of troubleshooting to get us back into a session together, but when we did, we had so much fun. I don't know if you're here or not.
Wait, is there like no set story or anything to
not
throw
really, no.
Oh no. Alright.
It has a charm to it.
I definitely think that, oh, hang on, let me access my,
Sorry, I moved 1 centimeter. We have to fight now.
This way. I sense danger.
Adventure. What even is this bow? I feel like I just pulled this from a different game.
What
the hell? It has a sight on it! What? I'm from the future. Be scared.
Right? What is this? What are these emotes?
There are
Okay.
What is... Oh, God!
What? What? Capoeira? Capoeira?
Oh. What was that?
I have no idea. Let's find out. I don't know what it did. Oh my god, he's too strong!
Oh, God.
Those guys went down super fast.
Yeah, they did.
Die, zombie! I just upgraded a bow and it got a legendary magic resistance. Listen to this. Plus 38% magic resistance, plus 24% magic resistance, plus 29% magic resistance.
Oh, parkour, look at you. Oh, where are you going?
Where no man has gone before.
Where are you? Oh, no!
I'm in the fog. The mist has taken me.
Oh, you're dead.
I'm alive. I think that was a bit overkill.
Totally necessary.
I tried to charge the
no.
range dudes and got
They're
double
like,
teamed.
no. Ow.
No.
Ow! Okay, I'm down too. Rune Knights does have other types of game modes, including a mini dungeon in the town, invasions, and the recently introduced raids. I haven't tried invasions or raids yet, but I will soon for sure. So, do I recommend Rune Knights? Well, I've enjoyed my time with the game gameplay is really solid, and it works pretty well. Despite the strange level design, some of the RNG mechanics across all the equipment, and the use of premade assets, I've actually really enjoyed my time with this game. Also, I joined the Discord channel for the game, where the dev responds very actively to suggestions and feedback that's posted there. I noticed Rune Knights seem to update a lot, like multiple times a day. Literally, a person will make a suggestion for the game in the Discord channel, and the dev will come back 30 minutes later saying, okay, try it out now and let me know if it works better. The dev is seriously working on this project, and it appears to be dedicated to giving players what they're wanting. I even had made some requests to adjust some of the numbers for shields and hand-to-hand builds, because with those two characters I had made, I felt they were actually relatively underpowered. Sure enough, within a week, 2 new updates were rolled out that changed the damage calculations and abilities for both shield users and hand-to-hand combat. Huge hats off to the dev for all their work. So, that was Rune Knights. Let's talk again about premade assets as a whole. I said at the beginning of the video that premade assets were awesome. Let me talk about what led me to that idea. So think of it this way, as 2 sides of a coin. One side is the developer and the other side is the artist that creates a premade asset. Looking at this from a developer's point of view, it actually reminds me a lot of myself. You see, when I was younger, I was really into video game programming, like I had mentioned earlier. I could throw together a pretty simple game pretty quickly, but I always had one major problem. I'm not an artist. Sprite work, drawing, music, all of that is way over my head. A lot of my older projects used placeholder sprites simply because I didn't have the skill to make my own. Game studios have large teams to be able to have multiple people who are all good at one aspect of game design. Not everyone can afford a team, and some people may not have the skills to make their own designs. Now, there are very talented solo developers out there that can do all of it, but those are definitely the exception to game design and not the rule. So having access to an asset store can let a solo developer focus entirely on programming and making the models and assets work together as they're supposed to, rather than trying to do everything by themselves. So then there's the other side of the coin, and that's the artist of the premade asset. Of course, they're getting money from selling game assets that they create, but if you think about it, they're also building a profile for themselves. You see, this person could be pulled into an interview at, oh, I don't know, Bethesda, and they can say, yeah, I made this asset of a troll, and it was used in 5 very successful games on Steam. The same can really be said for the programming side of the coin too. Hey, I programmed these games, and they are all up for sale on Steam and have sold this many copies. The short version of what I'm trying to say is by supporting developers that use pre-made assets, you're helping both programmers and artists to become successful and find their own paths into potentially becoming professionals in the gaming industry or maybe even other fields. And that is incredible. It seriously is. So how do we look at games themselves that use pre-made assets? Well, I think the idea is pretty simple. Pre-made assets don't make a bad game. Bad developers make a bad game. Thank you everyone so much for watching this episode of Dr. Modelot. If you enjoyed the video and you want to see more, please hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss a single episode. For now though, this has been Dr. Modelot. Thank you for stopping by the office.
Thank you.